Emma's New Friends at Riverside Elementary. Chapter 1, A Fresh Start. It was Emma's second week at Riverside Elementary, and she was feeling a lot more comfortable than on her first day. She already knew some of her classmates' names and had started making friends with Sophie and Mia. Today, Mrs. Harper announced that they would be doing a special activity called Buddy Time to help everyone get to know each other better. "Okay, class," Mrs. Harper said, smiling warmly, "I want you to pair up with someone you haven't talked to much yet. Today, we're going to be learning more about each other by asking questions. Let's see how much we have in common." Emma looked around the classroom and noticed a girl sitting alone at a table near the window. She had dark brown hair tied up in two neat braids and was quietly reading a book. Emma took a deep breath and walked over to her. "Hi, I'm Emma," she said, smiling as warmly as she could. "Would you like to be my buddy for this activity?" The girl looked up, surprised at first, then smiled shyly. "Hi, Emma. I'm Grace." "Sure, I'd like to be your buddy." They moved to a quieter corner of the room, and Emma sat down next to Grace. "So, we're supposed to ask each other questions. I can go first, if that's okay." Grace nodded. "That's okay." Emma thought for a moment. "What's your favorite thing to do at school?" Grace's eyes lit up. "I really like reading. I love stories about adventures and mysteries." "What about you?" "I love reading too," Emma said, her excitement growing. "But I also really like art. I like to draw and paint." "Wow, that's cool," Grace replied, her shyness fading a little. "Maybe you can show me one of your drawings someday." Emma nodded eagerly. "I'd love to." The girls continued asking each other questions, finding out that they both liked the same kinds of books and that they both had pets. Grace had a cat named Whiskers, and Emma, of course, had Buddy, her energetic dog. When the activity was over, Mrs. Harper asked the class to share one thing they had learned about their new buddies. Emma stood up proudly. "This is Grace," she said. "She loves reading, just like I do. And she has a cat named Whiskers." Grace blushed but smiled as everyone clapped. "That's wonderful," Mrs. Harper said. "It sounds like you two have a lot in common." Emma and Grace smiled at each other, feeling happy and excited about becoming friends. Chapter 2, Lunchroom Laughter. At lunchtime, Emma noticed Grace sitting alone at a table in the cafeteria. Emma waved to Sophie and Mia, who were already sitting at their usual spot by the window. "Can Grace sit with us today?" Emma asked. "Of course," Sophie said enthusiastically. "Come on, Grace," Emma called. "You can sit with us." Grace looked hesitant but then picked up her lunch tray and walked over to their table. She sat down quietly, glancing around nervously. "Hi, Grace," Mia said brightly. "Emma told us you like reading. What's your favorite book?" Grace's face lit up. "I really like the Magic Tree House series. Have you read them?" "I have," Emma said, nodding. "They're so fun. I love the adventures and all the different places they go." Mia and Sophie exchanged glances, then leaned closer. "We haven't read them yet," Sophie said, "but they sound interesting. Maybe you can tell us more about them." Grace's eyes widened. "Really? I'd love to." In the first book, Jack and Annie find a magic tree house that takes them to the time of the dinosaurs. As Grace talked, Emma felt proud of herself for helping Grace feel included. Soon, they were all laughing and talking like old friends. Emma realized that sometimes, making new friends was as easy as sharing a good book and a warm smile. Chapter 3, Recess Games. After lunch, it was time for recess. Emma, Sophie, Mia, and Grace walked out to the playground together. Kids were everywhere, playing tag, swinging on the swings, and running around the big field. What should we do? Emma asked. How about a game of hide and seek? Mia suggested. That sounds fun. Sophie agreed. Do you want to play, Grace? Grace looked around, a little unsure, but then nodded. Okay, I'll play. They chose Mia to be the seeker, and the rest of them scattered around the playground, trying to find the best hiding spots. Emma squeezed behind a big tree, peeking out just in time to see Mia counting with her eyes closed. Ready or not? Here I come. Mia called. Emma held her breath as Mia walked around, pretending not to see her. Then, with a playful grin, Mia spun around and shouted, "Got you, Emma." Emma laughed and ran out from behind the tree. You're too good at this, Mia. Now let's find Grace and Sophie, Mia said. The girls searched high and low, finally finding Sophie hiding behind the slide and Grace crouched behind a bush. They all laughed together, feeling like they had been friends forever. Chapter 4, Sharing Stories. The next day during their show and tell time, Mrs. Harper asked if anyone had something special to share. I do. Grace said, standing up bravely. She held up a small, worn-out book. This is my favorite book, she said. It's called The Secret Garden, and my grandmother gave it to me. She used to read it to me every night when I was little. It's about a girl named Mary who finds a hidden garden and makes friends in a new place. Emma watched as Grace's face lit up while talking about her book. She knew how much this meant to her new friend. That sounds wonderful, Grace, Mrs. Harper said warmly. Thank you for sharing. When it was Emma's turn, she stood up and held out a small drawing pad. This is my sketchbook, she said. I draw in it every day. I like to draw people and places that I see. Maybe I can draw the secret garden from Grace's book someday. Grace's eyes sparkled. I'd love that. Chapter 5, The Art Project. A few days later, Mrs. Harper announced that they would be starting a new art project. They were going to create a friendship mural together, with each student drawing something that represented friendship to them. Emma, Sophie, Mia, and Grace sat together, brainstorming ideas. What should we draw? Mia asked, how about a big tree with all of us under it? Sophie suggested. With books and swings. Grace added, her eyes shining. And maybe we can all be holding hands, Emma said. They got to work, each drawing a part of the mural. Grace drew the books, Mia drew the swings, Sophie drew the big tree, and Emma drew all of them holding hands, smiling brightly. When they finished, they stepped back and looked at their masterpiece. It was bright, colorful, and full of life, just like their friendship. Chapter 6, A Surprise for Grace. One afternoon, as they were packing up to go home, Mrs. Harper asked Grace to stay behind for a moment. Emma, Sophie, and Mia waited outside, curious about what was going on. When Grace finally came out, she had tears in her eyes, but she was smiling. What happened? Emma asked. Mrs. Harper told me that I'm going to get a special award, Grace said softly. It's for being brave and making new friends. That's amazing, Grace. Mia said, hugging her. Yeah, you totally deserve it, Sophie agreed. Emma nodded, feeling so happy for her friend. We're so proud of you, Grace. Grace wiped her eyes and smiled. Thanks, guys. I couldn't have done it without you. Chapter 7, A New Beginning. As the weeks went by, Emma, Sophie, Mia, and Grace grew even closer. They helped each other with homework, played together at recess, and shared their lunches in the cafeteria. By the end of the school year, they were not just friends, they were best friends. Emma knew that she had made a friend for life in Grace, and she was grateful for every moment they had shared together. One day, as they sat under the big tree on the playground, Grace looked around at her friends and smiled. Thank you for being my friends, she said softly. This has been the best year ever. It's just the beginning, Emma said. We have so many more adventures to look forward to. And with that, the girls laughed and ran off to play, knowing that no matter what, they would always have each other.